Well,
I hope the new state prison is not in the bonding bill, and we find a way to use Appleton.
So actually, let's move to that question as you've introduced it, Senator Westrom, because we have several viewers who are concerned about that. Viewer in Rothsay who wants to know why the prison's not being used when the state needs space. We have, of course, we have many viewers in the Appleton area who think this is something we should be doing. I know it's controversial. I know there's been a lot of discussion about it. Who can bring us up to date on where this stands in the legislature right now?
Well, I'd be happy to dive in. I'm sure everyone has an opinion.
Right.
I did have an opportunity to tour the Appleton prison a few weeks ago. It's there, standing empty. The company has continued to invest in the facility to keep it up to date so that it is fully licensed and ready to go. We have over last count I've heard anyway, over 600 state prisoners that are being housed in county jails around the state. And I can't believe that they are getting the kind of services that they need as far as education and health care and mental health care in those county prisons or jails, county jails, that they would get in a larger facility like the Appleton prison. However, and there's a big however, this has become a very controversial subject. I'm sure folks heard about the hearing that happened in the House last week where there were protests. There are some folks that...
Threats even.
There have been some threats. And there are folks that just see, because the prison is owned by a company that is in the prison business, they just don't want to have any association with it. But for the community of Appleton, it's an asset that's being unused, jobs that could be filled that are not filled. So I'll let others express their opinion, but my opinion is that we should go ahead and utilize that facility.
Representative Lean, any thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly do have hesitation about using private prison facilities. I understand some of the economic development needs and some of the economic development questions. However, I don't see that incarcerating people is a good model for economic development. I think if we're going to be talking about space issues in prisons and things and in our criminal justice system, I think a lot of that has to do with mental health issues and taking a look at, if there's a way we can use the criminal justice system to sort of reform how we approach mental health issues. I know Clay County, as Senator Eakin mentioned, we have, I think, the oldest county jail in the state in Clay County, and so we do need to do some things there, and the county is working with Chisago County to kind of implement or spearhead sort of a mental health pilot project so that we can, work with people who are facing the issues. And I have heard anywhere from 70 to 80% of the people that are in the Clay County Jail on any given day have some sort of mental health situation. And I think the very unfortunate thing about this is that they don't really encounter, the treatment or the resources out there for their mental health until they encounter that criminal justice system. So I think that's a big part of it. I think it's about, a big part of it is changing the way that we work with folks who have some of these mental health issues.
Senator Eakin?
Yeah, and as far as the Appleton prison, I think it is a facilities that is there, but I think we want to make sure that if we're going to be using it, that it's being used wisely, and I do have some concerns about the company that's being discussed as far as the owner of it. They have a reputation for cutting corners, and when we're talking about public safety, we don't want to be cutting corners. That's one of the most basic functions of government. And so I would be more in favor of looking at purchasing it by the state, and that is a possibility. And certainly we want to be utilizing facilities that are already out there. So that's something that I would consider. And Representative Lean's been talking about some of the other prison or jail needs in our state. There are a lot of jails that are very old and need to be replaced. And again, this is a very important function of government, and I do think the state needs to play a bigger role, I guess, in helping out our counties who are incurring a lot of costs because of regulations that are being imposed from the state. And so if the state's going to be imposing and setting rules and regulations that are costly, I think the state should be helping to pay for that. And so that's something I think we should consider as well.
Senator Westrom, has there been any, I know you've been watching this issue very carefully, has there been any discussion about potentially buying the facility from CCA?
Well, the bill that I co-authored last week with Senator Coonan and Representative Miller's moving it through in the House, and I have more optimism that this House is going to do the right thing and pass that, would have the state leasing the facility. So to the concerns about any reputation or the owner, they would not be operating it. They would lease the facility to the state. It would still save the state money. It would be state employees that would be out there, and we just wouldn't have to build a new facility at $140 million as a state. And so it is a real deal. The other thing is nobody talks about is this facility. It's a private-owned facility. It's the only prison in the state that actually pays property taxes to the tune of $1 million or more when it's been operational. And so it really is a no-brainer. It's unfortunate it's becoming a real partisan divide, and the governor and Senator Bach and others have started to actually oppose, and Senator Bach signed on a no Appleton bill, no Appleton prison bill, which was very disappointing, I thought, because I thought this leasing it by the state was probably a good compromise, because I would be a proponent that the state should contract and save $20 to $40 a day per prisoner, which I used to represent Appleton in my first House district for 6 years, and I've toured that prison many times, and they have great success stories, haven't had any problems different than any other prison has, but it really is an economic depressed area because of the prison being closed down, and it could be a win-win for the state and a win-win for the area. So I hope we can get it through. I think the House is more optimistic right now. Representative Miller's efforts have been real strong over in the House, and it seems like they might be passing it or taking it up on the floor. The Senate, I don't know yet.
The governor has said that he'd veto the bill, right? Am I
last I recall, I think that's right. Originally, I think he was more open to it. Now that it's getting closer to time, you're seeing the same old special interests prevail and come out with all kinds of excuses why you couldn't do it. And I think it's a real missed opportunity if we don't reopen the Appleton prison. You know, the other thing, the state is facing up to 1,300 bed shortage in the next 6 years. And so this is just such a no-brainer. We could ramp up. We wouldn't have to rent the whole facility right now. And we also could save the taxpayers from having to bond $140 million for a new prison. And if the prison population goes down, like Representative Levine was saying, because I think there are some mental health issues, but if you drop the population, you know, when you got a leased facility, you can let it go. If you build it, you got to keep it up forever.
Any other thoughts on the prison issue before we move on? If not, we'll move on. It's kind of like an auction. Speak quickly, or we'll move on.